Good evening, everybody. This is Lou Milano Ministries, broadcasting from the Philly area of Pennsylvania at approximately 9:25 p.m. Let's do a little reading, very little reading, from the book of Matthew, chapter 3, verse 4. Now John the Baptist himself was clothed in camel's hair, with a leather belt around his waist, and his food was locusts and wild honey. Why did God tell us that? I have some ideas. Let's see if you could maybe agree, and if you don't agree, I challenge you to find out why I believe the way I do. And I challenge you to prove me wrong. Okay, we know from God's Torah, I'm pretty sure that camels are not kosher or kashrut. So I don't believe John the Baptist ate camel meat. Now we know leather products were used in the Torah. And what else? And his food was locusts. It says locust. Now people, when they normally think of a locust, they think of an insect. Well, locusts, in my opinion, are not kosher. They're unclean. They're not meant to be eaten, the locust insect. But God's word says that John the Baptist ate locusts. This is in the book of Matthew, remember, the New Testament. And last but not least, it says John the Baptist ate wild honey. So if you were to take it at face value, John the Baptist's food was mainly and only locusts, which is an insect, and wild honey, which is a product of an insect. So say honey. Does that not come from an unclean insect? Would you eat a bumblebee or a wasp or a hornet? No. Because basically it's unclean. It's not meant to be eaten, like pork or shellfish or like shark, jellyfish, etc. There's a whole bunch of animals that are not meant to be eaten. Okay, now God's word says, I'm going to paraphrase, but I think I got it right. It is the glory of God to conceal a matter. But then God says this. He says, there are kings. I'm paraphrasing. And it is the glory of kings to search out a matter. What does that mean? To search out a matter. It means not to take something at face value. It means that you said, let's figure out what this really means. A lot of people just skim the top and just take it at face value. But I don't want to use the word code. I'm not talking about the Torah codes now. But could there be a type of code in the book of Matthew, chapter 3, verse 4? I'll read it again. See if there's a code in here, possibly. Now, John himself was clothed in camel's hair. Is that a code? With a leather belt around his waist. Is that a code? And his food was locusts. Is that a code? And last but not least, wild honey. Is that a code? Okay. Now, camels are unclean to eat. Leather is unclean to eat, but you could wear it. You need something to hold your clothes on. They didn't have clothes like we have today. It was basically one piece. And his food was locusts. Well, locusts are unclean. And if you think about it, last but not least, his food was wild honey. Now, honey is a byproduct of an unclean insect. We don't eat bees. We don't eat hornets. We don't eat wasps, do we? Unless we're in survival mode. It's just like the Shabbat. God commands us not to work. But if one of our animals falls into a pit, we are allowed to save its life in cases of emergencies. Alright, so with that being said, it is the glory of God to conceal a matter, and it is the glory of kings to search out a matter. So let's see if we can take this a little deeper. Okay, let's start over real quick. Now, John himself was clothed in camel's hair. Okay, now, it's not forbidden to shear a camel's hair, just like a man growing a beard and a mustache. He's not supposed to cut into it and shave it completely off the skin of the face and leave it naked. A man's face is supposed to have some hair on it. Most men have a thicker, deeper facial hair. But it's not against the law, God's law, to shear your beard or your neck, meaning to keep it closely cropped. Because, I mean, just think about it. Your beard would literally hit the ground if you grew it and you lived to 100 or 120 years old, which God said man shall not no longer live to 120 years past that unless there's certain circumstances. But back in Torah times, I think Methuselah was the oldest living man that ever lived, or lived in recorded history anyway. I think it was 900 years or more. And after that, the flood came, and then God said man shall never again live past 120 years old. And my friend Felipe, he's a Karaite Jew. He says 120 years, he goes, that's enough. Man's too wicked. Which is another topic in itself. Okay. So bear with me, hear me out. Now, I believe when it says John himself was clothed in camel's hair, I don't believe he killed the camel. And I don't think he skinned or shaved it down to the skin for the camel's hair. I think he sheared it and made a wool out of it. Now, what do we know about wool? Wool has a healing frequency to it. 5,000, I think it's a frequency of 5,000 or 5,000 megahertz. And linen has healing properties too. A lot of people sleep on their bed with a linen bed sheet and a bed pillow, because when you're sleeping, you're healing, you're regenerating your body, and the linen just bathes you with healing frequencies, or like a megahertz, especially a frequency. But the Torah says, do not mix, specifically, do not mix linen and wool. Why? Because they both have a frequency of 5,000. Now, if you were to take wool and linen and blend it in the same shirt like this, God says that's forbidden. Why? Well, science now knows why. And there's a reason for it. And God knew before the science. But anyway, I have something else I want to talk about, but it'll come to me. So let's touch on this. Wool has a healing property to it. So John the Baptist was wearing clothes that had a healing frequency to it, and it probably didn't need to be washed much. Maybe rinsed out in a river or a lake or whatever was around, some body of water. And it had a healing property to it, and it probably naturally repelled any type of virus or any parasite or any germ or bacteria of any form. Okay, so let's assume that John the Baptist wore camel's wool, and he also wore a leather belt around his waist. God says in His Word to wear the whole armor of God, the belt of truth, I think it's called, or righteousness. You always keep your belt on, the whole armor of God. You keep your boots on. You always go to sleep with your boots on. You always go to sleep with your belt on, and you always go to sleep with your breastplate on. You never take it off, ever, when you're in battle. But you have, I think, 3 other pieces of equipment that are part of your armory, and that's the shield, the helmet, and the sword. And you're allowed to lay them down. You're allowed to hold your shield in your left hand and your sword in your right hand, and obviously your helmet over your head. How would it feel like, what would it feel like to sleep with a helmet on your head, of iron? It wouldn't feel comfortable. It's like trying to take a nap with your hair in a ponytail, like I have. I wear a very extremely short ponytail. But if you have a long ponytail, especially a man, and even a woman, but for a man, a long ponytail would, I've had longer hair, so I know what it's like to lay on a pillow with a wet ponytail. I'll take out my hair just for a moment and just show you, give you an idea of how long it is. I'm not doing this for any particular reason. You see how long my hair is here and here. It's long, but it's not feminine long. At least not in my opinion. I believe in biblical times, men's hair was probably this length unless they were going out in battle. The ancient Israelites, especially the Romans, they cut their hair very short. Sometimes they would shave it because the enemy could grab hold of it and use it as like a third hand. Now, I'm not being vain, I don't want to appear like a complete slob on TV here. Okay. Now, a leather belt around his waist, and his food was locusts. This is how it's worded. We can't go to the Tanakh. We can't go to the Torah because, well, maybe the Torah tells us. But and I have a Tanakh right here. I have a JPS Tanakh. I don't know of anywhere in the Torah. I've read the Torah in the JPS Tanakh. There's nothing to be afraid of to have this, by the way. It's still God's Word. But I also have the New King James right here. And I venerate them. I try not to put anything on them unless it's my hand. I don't put. Here's a jar of raw honey. I wouldn't even take a pen or a nail clipper and rest it on top of one of my Bibles. Why? Not because I worship it, but I venerate it. Okay, now his food was locusts. What does that mean? Well, locusts, John did not eat locusts, the insect, a locust. What he ate was the honey locust tree. He ate from the honey locust tree. He also ate from the black locust tree. So there's 2 trees in the Bible that are known as locusts. It's called the honey locust and the black locust. And they're both trees, and he ate from those trees. Now that's pretty healthy. And last but not least, he ate wild honey. Now, this is wild honey, right here. It doesn't matter what brand you buy, as long as you buy raw and unfiltered wild honey. 100% pure honey, I'll show you. Minor demonstration. You might think this could cause diabetes. This is a whole food, not from the supermarket chain. Just watch. Be right back.